Hi, Cassidy Olivier, Province Reporter, here with Michael Smyth, our political columnist, who's joining us from Victoria. How are you doing today, Mike?
I'm good, Cassidy.
Good, thanks for joining us. Some big developments this morning on the negotiations between the BC government and the striking teachers. It sounds like they've reached a tentative deal. We don't know too much about the details. They're slowly trickling out. Premier Christy Clark's supposed to speak about it in about an hour and a half with Education Minister Peter Fassbender. But it sounds, Mike, that you have some of the details on what a framework might look like. Why don't you just start us off by telling us what the deal could entail?
Sure. The grapevine's burning up about what's in the agreement. We'll get confirmation on this later today, Cassidy. It sounds like it's a 6-year deal, a 7.25% raise for teachers. That's slightly more than what the government was offering. They had been offering a 7% raise, so they bumped that up to 7.25% over a 6-year deal. Crucial in here as well is money for teachers for a signing bonus, also known as a retroactive grievance fund for teachers. Now, if you remember, way back in 2002, when this whole thing began, the government stripped the teachers' contract, made them teach larger classes. That left the government vulnerable to 12 years of grievances from teachers saying, look, you guys illegally increased my workload, made me teach bigger classes for 12 years. Apparently in this deal, there is money to address that, and we anticipate the union will say, we will take those grievances off the table. They will then distribute that money to teachers in the form of a signing bonus. So that's going to be crucial for teachers who've lost a lot of money on the picket line. We've also got money for more specialist teachers. As you know, this is special needs kids, been a huge issue in this dispute. The government apparently putting some money on the table for special needs kids and specialist teachers. And this is a real big one. The so-called E80 clause. Now, this was class size and composition. The union did not want to lock in class size language in this contract because they've got a court case going against the government. It will be heard in the BC Court of Appeal next month. My understanding is the government has backed off on that E80 proposal, so no class size and composition language in the contract. That's what the government wanted, or that's what the union wanted, but there's a reopener in there. So apparently there'll be a reopener clause that, depending on what the appeal court rules, the government could begin negotiating class size and composition with the union. That is the basic framework of the deal as we understand it right now, Cassidy.
So one of the things, Mike, that we keep hearing about, and you've written about this yourself quite a bit, is what took so long for them to reach this deal. You know, like we lost several weeks of classroom time on this. Parents are mad, students are angry, teachers are angry. What took so long for them to get here?
Well, you know, this is a day to celebrate for parents and their kids getting back to school probably next week. But you're right. I mean, I think a lot of people, once the euphoria settles over this, is why couldn't we have got this settled back in the spring? If you go back to, I think it was May 21st, and I wrote a column, I think it was on the front page of our paper that day, and the question was, let's get Vince ready in the room. Let's settle this thing now. Please spare us the drama. Get a deal now. Don't make our kids suffer. And you know, when you take a look at the framework of this deal as it has emerged today, a lot of this stuff is kind of no-brainer, pretty obvious stuff. It seemed clear where the area for a settlement lay. So that's right. A good question is, why couldn't we have got this done a lot sooner? Because we've got 5 weeks of school have been wiped out as a result of this dispute, which is a shame. But the good news is we're going to apparently back to school on Monday. But it should have been done a long time ago, in my opinion.
You hearing anything about how they may make up for the lost time, or do you have any thoughts on that yourself?
Right now, they're talking about getting the schools open, and I'm sure there are going to be individual teachers are going to have to scramble to get kids up to class, get their classes going. Grade 12 students in particular, they've lost a lot of time in a crucial school year for them. So I guess there will be allowances made for the time that's been lost. I think significantly some universities in Canada, a lot of them have said, we understand there's been a teacher strike there. We're not going to hold it against grade 12 kids that are applying to get into university later this year or next year when they graduate. So there will be a lot of making up to do, but I'm sure they can get it done.
And we've talked about this in the past too. Who wears this strike really, and do you expect there to be some political damage, political fallout because of this?
That's a good question, Cassidy. You know, an interesting timing on this. It's a 6-year deal, so that will put it beyond the next election. So by the time the next election rolls around, we should still have labor peace in the classroom. So that's, I think, crucial to the political timing of the government. They did not want to go through this again before the next election. I'm sure the NDP are going to say this was Christy Clark's fault that we lost so many weeks of school here. But you know what the Liberals are going to do? They're going to turn around and pin it on the NDP and say, look, you guys wanted this thing to go to binding arbitration. We said we wanted a negotiated deal. Guess what? We got a negotiated deal. And if we had done what the NDP wanted and gone to binding arbitration on this thing, it probably could have stung taxpayers for a lot more money. I anticipate that's for the Liberals, the way they're going to spin this thing once the election comes around.
And lastly, hearing a bit on Twitter, this is being described as a historic deal. Do you think this maybe lays the groundwork for taking some of the poison out of the future negotiations between these two parties?
I think there's lessons to be learned on both sides. You know, for the government, don't illegally strip contracts. You know, this is why we got into this mess in the first place. Don't do it again. And for the teachers union, I mean, a lot of teachers have lost a lot of money while they've been on this picket line. This has been very damaging for individual teachers and their families. I think maybe next time they might think long and hard about going on strike again. So I think there are lessons to be learned on both sides. But I think one of the things the government is going to have to come up with here is, how can we do this better? We don't want to go through this gong show again. So how can we change the bargaining system to prevent this from happening again in the future? And once the dust settles, I suspect you're going to see the government try to address that question. And hopefully the union does too. We can have like you said, get rid of the poison, and let's not punish our kids again next time. Any
final words on Vince Reddy? They've called him the miracle worker. It seems like he's done it again. What do you think?
Yeah, Vince Reddy, he pulls off another miracle. And as soon as he settled this deal, he got on a plane and flew to Toronto to try and settle another dispute back there. So this guy is the miracle worker in the labor relations business. I had no idea how much money he makes. He must make a ton of money, but he's worth it. Sure. Because he seems to get a deal every single time, and we can thank him for that. But he should have been in there, like I said, Cassidy, a long time ago.
Sure. Let's leave it at that, Mike. Thanks a lot for joining us. And be sure to hit theprovince.com for the latest on this breaking story, and also pick up our paper tomorrow where you can find full coverage and also a nice column by Mr. Smith. See you next time, Mike.
Okay, thank you, Cassidy.
Thanks.